Jason Thane, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this conversation today. We've been building up to this, and we've been preparing, and it's going to be a fun discussion. Today, we're going to be focusing on building a values-based organization and culture. And I know this is really the focus of what you do in your organization, and you have so much expertise and insights to share around this, and related topics. So I'm excited to have the conversation. As we get started, I just wanted to share Jason's bio with everyone. Jason Thane is co-founder of Seattle-based engineering and software development firm GenUI. Did I say that right, Jason?
That's right.
Thane also has brought over 50 software products from concept to market, with a passion for organizational development and creating values-based cultures built upon highly collaborative and diversified teams. So important. And I'm super excited to have the chance to learn more about what you're doing at your firm and what you're doing in your experience in bringing these products to market and all the stuff related to that. As we get started, Jason, anything else that you would like to share by way of personal background, context, anything that would help frame the discussion for today?
Thanks so much, Jonathan. That's a really kind introduction. And so yeah, as you mentioned, we are a digital innovation consulting firm. We're based in Seattle, and we help clients accelerate technology roadmaps by bringing, designing and building software products for them and helping them bring those to market. And so, as you mentioned, a core focus of mine has been, in building a values-based organization at GenUI. It's proved to be a really effective tool for building the structure of our organization and the culture that scales. But my background previous to that was as a software product manager and a software engineer. So that's my core. And in my current job as leader of the company, I'm really focusing on non-engineering objectives like this. And so it's been a very interesting process to build and support this part of the company, and very different kind of role that I started out in early in my career. But I've been doing this for 11 years, and it's really a privilege to work with the fantastic team of people that we've got at the company. And values are how we tie it all together. That's how we know who the right people are, and that's how we know that we're all moving in the same direction.
Yeah, so I mean, you just started to get at what my first question was going to be, and that is, why is it important? Like, why does it matter that we have a values-based organization, and how do we even determine like what those values should be and how we start to integrate them into the organization?
So what we do is knowledge work, and so it requires a great deal of freedom. It requires a great deal of support from management, rather than a sort of command and control authoritarian hierarchy in a company. That won't work at all for what we do in the knowledge economy. Instead, you have to support wonderful employees in being the best that they can be, and in moving the company forward, making their own decisions constantly. And so because there's such freedom required, it is important to align everybody's efforts. If you completely have free reign, at every level of the organization, there's no alignment. People end up moving in opposite directions. And in particular, everything we do in business and in our professional lives is an optimization. We're optimizing for something over something else. And so when you choose one thing over another, that shows your values. And by creating an alignment in values, we're collecting a group of people together who are likely to choose the same thing in the optimization over the other thing. And if you don't do that, you can have some people optimizing for speed, other people optimizing for cost, other people optimizing for quality. And eventually, those people will disagree so much that nothing will get done, and the organization can grind to a halt. So by creating the conversation, and facilitating as a leader this conversation about values, we're able to create alignment in what we do. There's a shared understanding in the organization. This is what drives business success, the fact that we're all optimizing in this direction. the fact that we all make the same kind of decision, those decisions tend to support the decisions of others within the organization. So that's really, that's a pretty key route for us in creating, business success, and really, again, creating the scalability, so that we can be a bigger group, and do more, get more done, when we're working in alignment, because we don't sort of trip over one another on the way. So an example of this, our most core value, is, so we sort of say it as "don't go it alone." This is a belief in togetherness as the key to innovation, and that really it's sort of like in contrast to the opposite, as all good values should be. The opposite is to try to innovate by yourself, to try to go off in a dark cave and create something fantastic and then bring it into the world. That's really not the model for innovation that's going to create the future. It really is a collaborative effort, because truly innovative software products, truly innovative business models have to be created in close communication and contact with the outside environment. They have to take in many touch points, many integration points into account, and really be a function of their environment just as much as any organism would be. So, we really believe that our core value is that we want to do it together, that we believe that success comes from doing it together rather than doing it alone. And it just becomes very obvious when we interview somebody for a position. For example, we can tell if they're the kind of person who wants to say, okay, I've got the great idea, leave me alone for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and I'll go create it, and then I'll bring it back and it's going to be amazing. Some people really have that opposite sort of value system, and we know right away when we meet that sort of person, that's not, they're not likely to be successful at our firm. They're not likely to work in alignment with the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's a great example. I appreciate the context and the background behind what you're doing at your organization in terms of trying to create that values-based culture and the types of values that matter to you. What are some other examples that you've seen out there, either in your industry or other types of organizations, where they've just really demonstrated a strong, healthy organizational culture built on core values?
Yeah, we drew a lot of inspiration from, of course, the Amazon set of values. There's another consulting company called Slalom here in town and globally that has a very strong set of values. Part of what was inspiring about those is that they're written in a way that commands a decision. So, as I mentioned, our core values don't go alone, or we have another one called measure what matters. They are expressed in such a way that inspires somebody listening to choose one thing over another, to actually take a direct action. And I think that some organizations, create a value system in sort of lofty manner, and they sort of say, they might say collaboration, or that's our value. We value collaboration, or we value business success. Well, of course, everybody values business success. This does not command a decision or drive an optimization, and especially not in contrast to something else. And so, those organizations I mentioned have strong value systems that are expressed that way. They're expressed to, choose this and not that, and that's why we're successful. That's what drives business success. Amazon's example of customer obsession is a great one. They really, it commands the team at Amazon, everybody building their products, to obsess about the customer, to really think about them constantly and drive, the customer's well-being and success in every decision that's made at Amazon. So they're a great example.
Yeah, there are so many really great examples in tech companies. We often will talk about the Amazons, the Googles, the SaaS organizations, the Netflix, and various companies like that do a lot of really cool things. And I think one of the things that I think is so vital to all of this is recognizing that each organization has their own unique identity, their own unique values and culture. sometimes I find it kind of humorous, almost humorous and sad. Organizations will look to, for example, a Google or an Amazon, and they see that great success, and so they decide we're going to mimic and do what Amazon has done, or we're going to do, mimic the values of Google, and then they try to adopt that culture and to replicate it in their own organization, and usually that doesn't work. even
Yeah.
e- even though they see those same values, they're like, oh, we also care about those same things. But why doesn't that work? And then what? So if it doesn't work to just replicate what someone else has done, where they've kind of found the secret sauce that works for them, if that's not going to work for us, like how do we start that process to figure out what our values are and how we're going to start implementing them?
Yeah, the thing about values is they really are part of the structure of the organization as its own unique organism. And if you try to go out and take Netflix's values, for example, they have some really weird ones. I don't know if you've read the recent book by Reed Hastings about Netflix, but they do some things that are pretty bizarre and would cause absolute chaos and destruction in many other companies, like such as my company, for example. And I think that the key is that values actually are a part of the business process and the way the business flows through the organization, the way that value is created and delivered. And transplanting, somebody else's organ into your organism, may not work at all. And as a leader, it's crucially important to remember that your job is not to tell the organization what the value should be. In fact, if you do that, you're likely to sort of bring some of your own beliefs and own values, which may not be validated in the business context, and sort of clobber the real values of the organization. Instead, what you need to do is research and curate and understand what the values are that already exist in the organization that are making it successful. And there's a little trick you can do to do this. It's best to do it as a leadership team rather than an individual leader. And that is to get together and think about some of the key people in the organization who have just been the most impactful, have created the most value, have led the organization forward. And then to think about what it is about that person that really leads them to success or really drives their success in their position. If, for example, that person has a fantastic sort of business backbone and they understand the process and the rules that we need to stick to in order to make our company very valuable and relevant to our customers, then that's an example of a quality in that person that may evidence the value that's behind it. And in fact, that's exactly what we did in putting together the list. And in doing so, we came up with things that I certainly would not have known of or would have expressed that way. We really got it by thinking hard about who we are and who the people are who are really impactful for our business, drawing that out, expressing it as a value, and then helping to spread that to others within the organization.
Yeah, that's really great. It's so tempting to want to go and just find those case studies that are successful and then just try to replicate and adopt everything that they did. But to all the points that you've made, it's just not that easy. And there's no shortcut. Like, that's the point. Even if you end up with all the same core values that an Amazon or a Google has, or you want to adopt and replicate their business model, even if you end up in that place, you have to go through the process of having those conversations and generating the buy-in and making sure everyone's on the same page. And that just doesn't happen.
If you don't go through the process, you're not going to really understand them. You're not really going to understand what they mean. And in the case of all of our values that we've chosen, we have a whole story about how we got there, all the things we did that weren't that in the past, and then how we realized that this is the right choice to drive business success at our company. It's a whole historical narrative. If you just sort of parrot it from somebody else, I mean, it's not going to stick. Everybody will forget about it because it's not sort of drawn up out of these stories of what's happened in the business and what's made it successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen organizations make when they're trying to, they recognize the need, the importance, and they want to adopt more of a values-based culture, but that's not easy. It's hard work. So and people, even with the best of intentions, are going to end up, stepping in it and doing things that are actually counterproductive or undermine their own efforts. So what are some of those types of mistakes you've seen in the past, and how can
Yeah.
organizations overcome those?
Or what we've seen, or what I've made, the mistakes I've made in the past. I think what we just talked about, probably the biggest one of the need to really enroll everybody and have this sort of discovery process throughout the entire organization. If you don't do that, if you don't really hear from everybody in the process, you're going to miss the things that are actually working. You really have to take a hard look at what the company is that's making it work. And even if you're a startup, even if you're a tiny company that's just started, even if it's just one person, you can still look at what is working, what is driving customer value, what is going to make the business case successful, and pull out the values from that. And so I think that that's probably the biggest mistake leadership teams make, is they sort of say, oh, this is what should be, rather than this is what is. It kind of plays to one of our values, which is to validate early and often. Whenever we build software or build a product, we validate that with the user as soon as we can, so we can see how they react to it. We can understand if it's working, if it's not working. Values are like that too. You really need to, rather than just sort of put them out there, you need to draw them out and validate that they are in fact successful, that they are in fact leading the company forward. So I'd say that's the first one. The second one, I might say that I think a lot of people in values processes that I've seen will choose like really vague or general virtues, instead of in doing that, you're missing the opportunity to make the value very impactful by saying, we choose this thing instead of its opposite. So we choose quality over speed, for example. If you just say, okay, we choose quality, great. But if you can really contrast that in, with the alternative, that makes it capable of driving decisions. And it's really what you want out of the values process. You want it to be something that everybody can keep in their back pocket and say, okay, when faced with a choice, I know that the company tends to choose this, and that's what I'm going to do as well. And then the third thing is like when values are written down, not writing them down in the imperative. Like we really want an active verb in the value. Create safety for others. That's one of our values, and that shows people what you should do, not just what you should think, not just what you should believe. It's like, here's what we should do to make values real and make them impactful in our business.
Those are excellent thoughts and ideas. I'm wondering, adding upon that, what kind of mechanisms do organizations need to put in place to ensure that these efforts around values-based culture creation can actually end up being sustainable? Like it'll actually stick, right?
Yeah.
And not just be a passing fad, or just you have one particular leader who comes in and says, I want it this way, and they put some effort behind it for a while, and then their attention wanes and it goes somewhere else. How do we make it stick? How do we make sustainable values-based cultures?
Yeah, you want them to be alive, right? You want them to be a living being that is a part of your company. It's almost like another person or another department of the company that's there, and it's involved in business, and it's changing in response to that business. You don't want to pivot so often that that they lose meaning. That probably is a good sign that you chose the wrong values, or ones that weren't real or authentic in the business in the first place. If they're just sort of a passing fad, that yes, you make a poster, it goes up on the wall, and then nobody ever thinks about it. That again is probably a sign that they weren't really the authentic values that are drawn out of the company that really drive business. But when the values are brought up in everyday conversation, when people, at our company, we really hear it a lot when we hear the word together. We say we're going to do it together. That plays back to that value of don't go alone, don't go it alone. Because that value is brought up out of the culture of the business and seen, by everyone as something that does matter. We hear it recurring over and over. And I think that's the case with all of them, measuring what matters and validating early and often, creating safety for others, practicing empathy, and so on and so forth. All of these things come up in everyday conversation. And so I think our commitment to sort of recognizing when they do come up and just sort of putting a pin when the conversation turns to something that does reflect on the value, just saying, oh yeah, that is one of our values. That's something that we wrote down. There it is. And here's yet another example of how that matters to the company. And I would also say that it's really important to use values when you hire. I personally think that one of the best uses, at least for me in an interview, is to determine how many of the candidates' own core values happen to be consonant with the company's values. So if I'm interviewing a candidate and I can tell through the narratives they're giving me about their past positions and what they're interested in, what their passions are, if I can tell that they like to practice empathy or create safety for others, for example, if they're very validation driven in their work, then I go, oh yeah, we have the same values. And then I try to evidence some of the company's values to see if they respond to those. And if you can do that in an interview, that's probably the most effective way to apply the values, because if you bring people into the organization that already have these values, it's not hard at all to achieve alignment. If you bring people into the organization with opposite values or opposing values, they optimize away from everybody else, it's not going to be a fit. And so I think it's really key to use them in interviews. And then the last one I'd say is that using them in performance evaluations and to establish sort of the competencies that matter in career paths within the company is really important. And so framing the performance evaluations around competencies that themselves are rooted in the values. So what does practicing empathy mean? Well, it means we stay in relationship in our teams at one level, but maybe at a higher level of competency, it means we stay in relationship with our customers and our clients, or we stay in relationship with people in the outside world. And I think that just rooting all of the competencies that we evaluate in performance evaluations, rooting them in the values really helps to sort of embody them in the company.
Excellent ideas. I mean, I think it's not rocket science, but it does take intentionality. It does take consistent effort. And you just outlined a whole bunch of ways that we can start to build those sustainability mechanisms so that we have a better chance of things taking hold. And ultimately, if we have values and we care enough to start to go through this process, we don't want to be spinning our wheels and putting all this effort and this time and this money behind stuff that's not going to stick, right? And so we want to leverage those values to drive innovation and to drive success and engagement and motivation in our people and with our customers. And so all of this, holistically, we bring it all together, and that can start to create exceptional organizations that are ultimately going to drive better outcomes for the business, drive better outcomes for the individuals on your team, and it's just a really great, rich process to go through.
And it's more fun. I mean, when you are singing a song and others hum along, so it's way more fun when people are pointing in the same direction and you finish each other's sentences and sandwiches and things like that. that's the fun of it, and it just removes so many impediments when people understand what the values are and understand the things that they're doing are likely to be recognized by their colleagues as moving us forward and beneficial to the whole. That's really what it's all about. So I see it as pretty key. To your point, it's not rocket science. It's stuff everybody knows, hoping to share some like practical thoughts, about how these actually have been applied and can work and not work. Because it's, in the abstract, it's easy to say, well, yeah, we want to be a values-based organization, but getting there is, there's some practical considerations to take into account. I think we've touched on a few of those.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Jason, I think we could go on and on because we've only scratched the surface and there's a lot more depth to all of the topics we've been discussing. But I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're at the top of the hour and our time together is drawing short. But before we close today, and perhaps I can have you back on so we can continue the conversation later, I wanted to give you a chance to give the last word, to share with listeners how they can get in touch with you, find out more about you and your business, and what you might be able to do for them. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that with us?
Oh, thanks. That's very kind. If there's anybody listening who wants to hear more stories about sort of how we got where we are with values and what the process was for creating them and aligning on them, the values are that we have are posted on our website, genui.com/about, and you can go there and maybe receive some inspiration for some things that may be valuable in your process. And if you do that, I would really love to hear from you. Anyone. You can email me directly, jason@genui.com, and I'd love to have a conversation with anybody listening that may be undergoing the same sort of process and may say, hey, I thought of something interesting. I certainly would love to hear ideas from anyone, as well as to share, any aspects of our process that may be valuable to others.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. It really has been a pleasure. And I look forward to having a chance to talk to you again soon. For now, I hope listeners will reach out to Jason, get connected, find out more about what he can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone will stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here, Jonathan.
Thank you.